The rain never seems to cease at this time of year. It pours from the sky in its unending grief, as if longing for something unseen. Thunder roared in the distance, enough so to make the young woman flinch, but not enough to make her waver. A woman sat beside a man with an imposing brow and a large beard. The man wheezed and coughed, but kept hold of the newspaper in his hand. The front page read the following: "The Great Plague of London, 7,000 deceased." The man frowned at the words. How utterly preposterous! What on earth are the physicians doing? The lady next to him coughed into her handkerchief. When she pulled it away from her mouth, it was stained red with blood. Lady, I'm sure they are trying their best, my dear. Their best is going to kill everyone. Forget this rubbish. Amelia is still well and finally of age to marry. We will arrange for a suitor before she becomes sick. Lady, if we send her out there, then she will certainly grow sick. She should stay here locked in her room until it is safe to leave. Lord, no man will want a woman who has spent her only good years locked in her bedroom. But she will be safe. The lady held her cheek, which quickly reddened after the impact. The Lord glared at her behind his bushy eyebrow. You would do well to remember who she belongs to, who you belong to. The lady blinked, trying desperately to stop her eyes from welling up. Walika, please come here. Her voice carried through the house, the otherwise empty house. Time seemed to pause for a few moments before a woman with blonde hair skating behind her entered the room. She wore the dress of a maidservant and a natural expression that wavered just so after seeing the mark left by the Lord's hand. She stepped forward, crossing the tiled floor with slow steps that seemed to match the pace of the thunder that roared outside. The lady nodded to the maid nodded back to the lady. The moon reflected from the metal object in the maid's hand as she swung it down into the Lord's throat. He let out a gargled scream. Blood splattered from his mouth, and he tried to speak. Tried to yell, but it was too late. He fell forward onto the floor, and the tiles darkened into a crimson red. He squirmed and crawled, searching for something that no one would ever know, before he fell still only a few minutes later. The lady stared at the scene. Her heart raced, and a laugh escaped her lips. Finally, you'll never hurt Amelia. I hope you rot in hell. The maid wiped the knife against a small white hand towel. The stains would never be fully removed. My lady, I'll deal with the body. I will help you. He is too much for you to carry alone. But my lady, you are sick, and I will get no better sitting here. The two grabbed him by an arm each and dragged him towards the stairwell, leaving a trail of blood in their wake. No other words passed from their lips as they executed their task. They reached the end of the hall and began to ascend to the first floor. The Lord's head hit against each step with a soft thunk. Thunk, thunk, thunk. The house was silent in all other regards. Two doors sat next to each other. Both were shut tight as the two women reached the top of the stairwell. The maid pushed open the door to the master bedroom and entered. The room was spacious and clean, with fresh bedding left by the maid just the same morning. On the wall above the bed, a newly painted family picture. The two struggled and finally lifted the man into the bed. His face was stuck in a terrified expression, and his clothes were ruined. You will protect Amelia, right? I'll do anything you desire. Then let us begin. Lightning struck somewhere in the distance, lighting up the otherwise darkened room and showing many things that should have been left unseen. The maid removed her shoes and crawled into the sheets beside the corpse, while the lady dipped her fingers into the Lord's wound and drew a line of blood around the bed. She spoke softly to no one in particular, chanting words that should never be chanted. When she was done, she stepped over the threshold and approached the maid. Never let anyone hurt her. Protect her no matter what. I will, my lady. Thank you, Lalika. You'll never truly understand how much your actions mean to me. The lady leant forward and left a soft kiss against the maid's lips. It was brief and gentle, and something the two had wished to share for longer than either would admit. As the lady pulled away, the maid drew her knife, still smudged with blood, and brought it to her veins. Goodbye, Lalika. Goodbye, my lady. The maid bled out slowly, painfully, slowly. The lady gasped for air and clawed at her neck. Everything in the manor became still, everything apart from a young lady named Amelie, who sat in her bed upright, feeling a deep dread in the pit of her stomach, and another young lady named Lelika, who stood over two corpses laying beside each other in bed. The young lady named Lelika stared at the maid in the bed. Her own face, her own blood seeping through the bed. And yet, here she stood. She looked at herself in the mirror and saw a different person entirely. She was no longer the maid. She was Lelika. Her voice was softer, her hair longer. It worked! When she turned back towards the bed, Lelika froze. Both of the bodies were gone, and in their place, two skeletons. How long has it been? She walked towards the door and found it locked. Digging through the tattered clothes of the long-dead maid, she retrieved the key and opened it. The door beside the master bedroom sat ajar, just enough for Lelika to peer in. Amelie sat on the end of her bed, staring at herself in a small handheld mirror while brushing her hair. She hummed a quiet tune, but froze as her eyes met Lelika's. Who are you? I'm Lelika. Lelika, but your mother told me that you had a maid named Lelika. What a coincidence. What are you doing here? How long has your mother been gone? My mother? I saw her. She frowned and clutched her head as if she hadn't quite remembered. She frowned and clutched her head as if she couldn't quite remember. I saw her just this morning. I see. Your parents have left to be cured of the plague. They have asked me to stay here with you until they can return. Really? A cure truly exists? That's right. So until then, how about we be friends? Amelia's face lit up, and their eternal friendship began. How many years had passed since that day? Neither could tell. Time seemed to stand still within that manor, out in a field in the middle of nowhere, and that's the way Lelika wished it to stay. Lelika, a letter has arrived. What? Her blood ran cold as Amelie stared at the envelope in her hands. When was the last time we had a letter? How exciting. Perhaps it's mother writing that she will return soon? Perhaps so. Oh? It seems to be addressed to someone else entirely. Perhaps it was brought here by mistake. Then we had best send it back. Give it to me and I'll have it returned. A peek wouldn't hurt, don't you think? Lelika watched as the first crack formed in her fragile world. I will dispose of it immediately. Give it to me. But it was too late. The letter inside had already been let loose, and Amelie's eyes had already taken in the words left for someone else. Sophia. Lelika, I think I will write her back. I will let her know that I received the letter by mistake. That isn't needed. Please. Just one letter. Thank you, Lelika. How many letters had arrived at their door since then? How many times had Amelie spoken excitedly about Sophia to her? Sophia. It's always Sophia. Sophia is the crack in this fragile reality. Sophia. I have to get rid of Sophia. Lelika? Lelika's eyes opened with a jolt. I'm sorry, I'm a little tired. What did you say? Sophia says she's coming to visit. Another crack formed from the last. It sprawled across reality, threatening to shatter at any moment. Amelia, I don't think that's a good idea. The plague. She says that it's safe enough to travel. Now, in her letter, perhaps mother and father will return soon too. Lelika forced a smile. But we don't need anyone else here. We have each other. Of course, you are my dear friend, Lelika, but Sophia and I have been writing to each other for... She shook her head as if chasing off the beginning of a headache. For a long time anyway. I'm excited to finally meet her. Won't you be excited with me too? Can we all be friends? Right, friends. I'm sure we'll all be best friends. For an amount of time that neither Lelika or Amelia could truly comprehend, the house was suddenly buzzing with life. Amelia's footsteps were light and her days filled with excitement as she awaited the arrival of Sophia. And finally, to Lelika's dismay, the day came. The pendulum clock on the wall swung back and forth, ticking down the time. Lalika stared at it, wishing that it would slow down even further. 10 minutes, then 20, then an hour passed, as the two stood by the door waiting for a knock. She seems to be late. Perhaps she's not coming after all. Amelie, there's no need to make such a sullen face. Perhaps this is for the best. Amelie. She wrote that she'd be here, so I shall wait. With her face hidden from Amelie, Lalika scowled. You truly believe it's safe to have visitors during the outbreak? Lalika, I believe we have been isolated long enough, and Sophia has written that it is safe. I trust her word. She would not endanger us. And if your pen pal turns out to be a robber in disguise, what then? Amelie smiled, to Lalika's dismay. She has a way with words that only a woman could have. A lady robber, then? Nonsense. By the way, Lalika, have you seen my letters? I can't say that I have. A knock sounded at the door, instantly halting their conversation. Emily rose from her place and took a steady step forward before Lalika raised a hand to her. Allow me to see if she should truly be allowed entry. The door groaned as it slowly swung open and revealed the young woman who had knocked at the door. She was drenched from head to toe. Lalika stared at her. Light hair and eyes, she looked almost like a kitten. Instantly, Lalika's dislike for this woman grew. Lalika stepped to the side just in time for Sophia to bounce through the door and wrap her arms around Amelie. Her blood boiled. She watched as the clothes she had carefully handmade become drenched by someone that doesn't deserve to even look at Amelie. Amelie! Sophia! Amelie's arms wrapped around Sophia in return, and Lalika turned away. My, you're completely drenched. Did you forget your umbrella, perchance? Oh, perhaps her umbrella got carried away by the wind. With a cool anger written over her features, Lalika shut the door. I didn't even think to bring an umbrella. The forecast said sunny all day. My fault for believing it, I guess. I can't believe you're truly here. Me either. About time, right? You're just as pretty as I knew you'd be. And you too, but what are you wearing? Seeing your house, I feel like I should have dressed up a little more. No, perhaps it is I that is overdressed. Lalika stood to the side, her arms crossed lightly over her chest. Her long hair reached down nearly to the wooden floor. Pardon my manners, my dear friend. Lalika is here too. I believe I wrote about her in the past. I remember. I've kept all your letters, don't worry. As you should. Amelie side-eyed Lalika upon hearing her tone, but Lalika simply looked away. Ah, sorry, but is there any chance you have a towel? Of course, my apologies. I would usually have someone here to attend to us, but everyone's been sent home. Only the three of us remain. Let me fetch you a towel. Amelie disappeared down the hallway, leaving Lalika alone with Sophia. This really is a manor. When she told me about her house, I almost didn't believe it. Has no one told you it is rude to poke around someone else's house? Sophia walked straight past Lalika without even a notion of responding. Hello? You can't see me? Sophia ran her fingers along the edge of the table before reaching to pick up a book that rested there. Don't let her touch it. Don't let her touch anything. She'll break it all. She'll undo everything. She wants to hurt Amelie. Can't find out the truth. The windows shook loudly in the wind. With the flick of her small wrist, Lalika allowed the door to fly open, causing Sophia to whip around in surprise. It's so windy. Lalika locked in on the object that Sophia had been reaching for. She rushed forward and took hold of it, then quickly hid it behind a cabinet as Sophia reached to close the door. Phew! Amelie? Sophia spun around but looked straight through Lalika. Sophia? Oh, Amelie. Please, use this. Thanks, I'll bring an umbrella next time, I promise. Lalika watched as Sophia dried herself with the towel. Our towel. It's not for her. There can't be a next time. Then if you're now dried off, would you care for a tour of the house before the afternoon tea? That sounds great. On your right is the pantry and down the hall is the boiler room, but you shouldn't have any need for those spaces. Sophia and Amelie walked side by side, close enough to their shoulders almost touched. Lalika stared at the place where they almost connected. Lalika stared at the place where they almost connected, seething with quiet rage. These are all the guest bedrooms. I have spared this one for your use. If you find anything not to your standards, you can let myself or Lalika know. Amelie, I have a feeling your standards are much higher than mine. I've never been in a house that looks like this. No? Is your home not similar? Well, it's a lot smaller. There is no shame in that. You own your own property, yes? Yeah, I recently bought it. With your husband? What? No, of course not. I'm not married. Shut up. Your father allowed you to buy property on your own? Ah, Amelia, you speak just like how you write. I'm so surprised. Your voice disgusts me. And you speak quite casually. People usually say that about me. Being here around you makes me want to be more formal. What need is there of formality between friends? That's true too. Your words are poisoning, Amelie. This is the morning room and next door to the dining room. I'll be having afternoon tea in the sitting room here. So many rooms. Upstairs is my bedroom and the master bedroom. I must ask that you do not enter the master bedroom, as it belongs to my parents who are currently away. Of course, I won't go poking around anyway. Lies, you're lying. All this walking has made me parched. Shall we take afternoon tea now? Sure, that sounds good. Why don't you have a seat while Alika and I prepare our food? Oh, I can come help. Nonsense, you are my guest. It will be remiss of me to allow you to lift a finger. If you insist, but I'm happy to help anytime. Thank you, I'll be back soon. Please rest. Amelie? Yes? It's nothing. Take your time. Sophia slipped through a doorway and disappeared. Amelie smiled widely while Alika just stared ahead blankly. Isn't this lovely, Alika, to have a new face in the house? It feels like forever. Yes, how lovely. I'm glad you're having fun at the very least. Are you not? I'm always having fun when we're together, Amelie. I see. Are you jealous? Worry not, my dear friend. Of course, our friendship means just as much to me. I value you greatly. Just as much? Indeed. Come along, Alika. Let us prepare tea. Amelie, I have something to say to you. You are my very best friend. Did you know that? I feel the same towards you, Alika. And as much as I feel the need to be truthful with you, you appreciate the truth, don't you? Of course, I trust your judgment very much. Is something the matter? Your mother contacted me. She believes they will be able to return shortly. Oh, Alika, that's wonderful news. Indeed, she was very excited for me to pass on her message to you, but... Well, she wasn't pleased to hear that you had someone visiting without her permission. Oh? I thought she would be delighted that I had invited a friend. Of course, I pleaded with her that Sophia was a dear friend, but she wouldn't listen. I see. Did she say when she would return? No, but it seems to be soon. Then I'll send Sophia away like normal tomorrow. I can't exactly force her out into the storm, can I? Why not? Alika! Naturally, I'm just teasing, of course. It wouldn't be right to send her away at a time like this. I'm glad to hear that we've come to an agreement. How pleased am I to know that Mother will return soon. Let's go prepare tea, shall we? Did you finish baking yesterday? The pastries are ready for serving. Excellent, I'll just fetch the tea then. Allow me, a lady of your standing shouldn't be doing such a menial task, should you? Should she? Don't be absurd, even Sophia herself seems to be fine in the kitchen. Did you hear how she jumped to help? I should follow in her footsteps. What would your parents think of that? I appreciate the sentiment, but they took with them all of the staff. I have little choice but to prepare my own tea. I see. Then I shall attend to our guest. I wouldn't want her to become lonely. Would you? I'll only be a few moments. Of course, anything for you, Amelie. It'll be a good chance for you to become friends. I'm sure it will be. Lolika's smile at that moment seemed to hide behind it an intent much deeper than Amelie realized. The walls had eyes. Eyes that tracked Alika's every move. They followed her as she made careful, deliberate steps towards the sitting room. They stared, their eyes bulging, judging. They had no mouths in which to scream, but Alika could still hear their words. We all sacrificed ourselves for you. Hope, our only hope. Amelie, protect Amelie. Prove your worth, prove your love. Amelie, Amelie, Amelie. Under her feet, shattered glass pierced through her shoes, cutting her feet. You could feel the blood ooze out, pooling. It was warm, comforting. She looked up to find where the glass had come from. Then she noticed the cracks once again. Along every wall, every floorboard, even through the air. The world was fragmented. It was already broken. Not beyond repair. It's not, my lady. I'll fix this still. You can rest, please. Rest. I'll take care of everything. Anything and everything for you. She blinked. The world reverted to the way it should. The glass that lined the floor gone. The eyes that followed from the walls gone. Cracks that had begun to wrap themselves around Lalika's ankles had disappeared too. She stood in front of the sitting room door, which sat slightly ajar. Inside, Lalika could see Sophia staring out of the large window. Her back stayed turned as Lalika entered the room. Of course, it wouldn't have been possible for Sophia to turn and look at her, but Lalika still found herself taking careful, quiet steps. The window shook past the dark dead curtains. You who would attempt to defy your fate, why don't we see how long this little game lasts? Why don't we test whose love is stronger? I swear my love is unwavering. My infatuation, my yearning, my desire, you could never even wish to match it. Lalika pulled out a chair, roughly dragging the legs across the floor. Yet you dare to challenge me? You dare to test my love? Amelie, was that you? Amelie. Sophia took careful steps towards the chair, resting her hand against it. Or Lalika. Ha 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 ha. You're nothing. Sophia sat down in the chair that was offered to her while Lalika circled around as if a cat after its prey. But her steps paused as she heard something strange. Footsteps from above. The master bedroom? In front of her very eyes, Lalika watched the scene unfold. A scene that made her blood run cold and her body freeze in place. My lady! The lady of the house stood beside Lalika. Where before the two had stood eye to eye, now the lady stood taller than Lalika by at least a head. My lady, what are you doing here? The lady removed her shoes and stepped onto the table. Did you come to punish me? Are you angry? I promise I'll remove the plague that has entered our home. I swear it upon my undying love. The lady did not respond. Instead, she reached up and took hold of the noose. The rope wrapped around her neck exactly where the necklace that the maid had gifted the lady should have rested. Join me. Her eyes locked onto Sophia. Her hand was outstretched, waiting to be taken. Why won't you look at me, my lady? Are you truly so angry? Angry enough to despise me? For but a moment, as Sophia's outstretched hand came closer and closer, the lady's eyes turned slowly towards Lalika. They carried with it a message that only Lalika could decipher. Lalika's body shook. It trembled and trembled until she could bear no more, and she ran from the room as fast as her legs would carry her. If the hallway still had eyes, they weren't fast enough to follow Lalika. The floorboards, as if made of quicksand, threatened to suck her up and bury her deep within the house. Her feet felt heavy and laden. Every step was as painful as that brief glance. She raced through the hall and up a flight of stairs, past the stained glass window, which left a myriad of colors over the carpet steps, and past the doors that led to the master bedroom and Amelie's room. Closer, closer, until she arrived at the bookcase. She pushed it aside and entered the hidden room. The room behind the bookcase was small, and not a single window faced outwards, thus the room was near pitch black. Each wall was plastered with handwritten letters clearly for Lalika alone. Her eyes, frantic, finally started to calm as she took in the words left to her, for her, only for her. Lalika's eyes set on a particular letter. Dear Lalika, how wonderful to hear that you are doing well. I've been very busy this week, but most of it is boring, so I won't bog you down with the details. Do you know what happened just yesterday? Of course you don't. You weren't there. I was walking home when I found an abandoned kitten. Someone left in a box on the side of the road. How could anyone do that? Anyway, I took her home and named her Lily, after you. It is a little embarrassing, writing it out like that. I hope you don't mind. Yours, Marina. Dear Lalika, I've spent the past week studying. Don't get me wrong, I enjoy it, but everyone needs a break, you know? On my desk, I have a little cactus in a pot. To be honest, a cactus wasn't my first choice, but I've killed every other plant I've ever owned. Anyway, it bloomed. There's one beautiful flower coming out of it. I couldn't be happier. So that makes me so that makes studying easier. I think your environment makes a big difference. How about you? Do you have any plans? I'm looking forward to hearing about it next time. Yours, Marina. Dear Lalika, today was tough. I tried my hardest, but still failed. Don't you think life is unfair sometimes? I wish trying hard enough was all it took to succeed. Sorry I'm whining, aren't I? I came out of my interview and it was raining. I thought, just my luck, but something interesting happened. A rainbow in the distance peeked out from behind the gray clouds. It reminded me of you, and then I felt a little better. I hope we can meet soon. Yours, Marina. She ripped a letter from the wall and clutched it to her chest, collapsing to her knees. She couldn't hate me. She couldn't. She adores me like I adore her. She entrusted her everything to me. Everything, Amelie. The letter dropped from her fingers that were neither cold nor warm. You want me to get rid of that disease, don't you? You won't accept me until I protect Amelie, is that right, my lady? I'd do anything you ask. If that's all I have to do, then I will do it. I'll keep Amelie safe forever. Lalika stood from the ground and dusted off her skirt. Her face, that had previously contorted in distress, had finally calmed, and a smile gently crept over her face. I love you, my lady, and for you I will love Amelie too. The running water sloshed in the steel-lined wooden tub. State-of-the-art system no one else in the country owned anything like it. But how many years ago was that? How long it had been? Sophia leaned over the sink, her bone-white knuckles grasping either side of it. Her back was turned to Lalika. She wanted she could stab her in the back and be over with it. No. I need to keep Amelie's trust. She needs to leave her go somewhere she'll never be found. Or do it herself. She lifted her face to me and then froze. Her eyes bore into those she was seeing she shouldn't. Lalika stared back, unmoving. Leave. Leave already. Who? One step at a time, maintaining eye contact. Through the mirror, Lalika crept closer, until the two were nearly touching. Why do you want to take Amelie away? Can't you see that she loves me, not you? Your words are poisoning the household. If you don't leave, I'll kill you. I'll have no choice, I'll just kill you. Who are you? Sophia whipped around, but her eyes didn't focus on any spot in particular. To her, Lalika was gone. Haha. Lalika walked towards an open cabinet and pulled something out. The metal of the razor glinted. Lalika raised it up and she moved to stand over the bath. With ease, the metal cut in her arm. Drops of blood fell into the water, leaving tiny splashes where they connected. Blood still runs in my veins after all. We rushed past Lalika just to turn off the overflowing water before she froze once again. You can hear me now, can't you? Why not just end it? You're scared. You're so terrified you just came here to see your friend and look at what's happened to you. Amelie? Yes, Amelie. Amelie, where did you go? Where are you, Amelie? I want to see you. Shut up. You don't deserve to speak her name. You don't deserve to be in her presence. Why don't you just give up? Just sink deeper into the abyss. Isn't it inviting? Sink? Right, I should. Isn't the water so warm and inviting? That's right, just sink down into it. Then you'll finally be able to rest. Amelie, you... A knock came from the door. Lalika's widened eyes went from the door to the young woman in the bath, then back again. Excuse me, I'm coming in. Alright, so I've got to just split this in. The house had a heart. The heart was beating the same. Like Morse code, as if the house itself were telling her to do something. Get rid of her. Cut out the disease. Protect Amelia. Bit her thumb, pacing back and forth. Amelia will be upset, but Amelia doesn't need anyone else. She has me. Don't be upset for long. She'll forget. That's right, she'll forget. Her breath hitched in her throat. What do I do? What do I do? She just won't die. My lady, what am I supposed to do? At that moment, Lalika put her ear to Amelia's door, listening intently. How about coming away for a while? She doesn't belong to you. Lalika. Finally, Lalika snapped out of her daze. At some point, Amelia had left the guest bedroom, a short distance away from her. Instantly, she took a deep breath and composed herself. But her heart still beat as loud as a drum, and the cracks that seemed to be centered around Amelia were still spreading at an increasing rate. It is late. You should retire to your bedroom. Yes, I shall. It is nice having someone else around, isn't it? I feel as if the manor is coming back to life. I hope we see Mother and Father soon. I'm sure we shall. I'm sure we will. Shall I see you to bed? Yes, please. The hallway darkened with only a few... I think I realized in it. And tonight she'll see the fate of another person. That didn't matter now. She knew where she was going and what she must do. She inched closer and closer to the door that held behind it a sickness named Sophia. It was closed tightly. Lalika raised her hand, almost as if to knock, but instead pushed it open and entered. Just as the hallway was dark, so was the guest bedroom. The lantern had been blown out only a short while ago. No sound came to the bed. All was still. Lalika crept closer, closer and closer until she stood over the bed like a shadow. The woman underneath her kept her eyes shut tight. Her face was calm and serene. Lalika couldn't help but smile as her hands wrapped around her fragile, pale neck. Her fingers dug into Sophia's flesh, so soft and easily bruised. Still, she didn't even shift. For some reason, that made Lalika even more furious. But as the young woman named Sophia laid as still as a statue, her mind wandered back to another that had once done the same in this very house. The young woman who had left Amelia in Lalika's care, who had only wanted the best for her daughter. Who only wanted for her to be happy. The problem is she'll leave. That's the problem, isn't it, my lady? Cold fingers slowly unwound from Sophia's throat. That she'll leave and take Amelia away, but if she stays, then won't Amelia be happy? She'll be so happy, always, forever. And then maybe you can... Lalika withdrew from the room in a rush, her feet carrying her faster than they had ever before. Through the hallway, up the stairs, and into Amelia's bedroom once again. The bed was warm and inviting, like envelope myself. The warm was bed and inviting. Lalika enveloped herself in that heat, wrapping her arms around Amelia tightly. Lalika, do you want Sophia to stay here forever? What? She will leave if we don't do anything about it. She'll leave, and you'll never hear from her again. That's not true, Lalika. She wouldn't just do that. My dear Amelia, I spoke to her just a moment ago. She was already packing up her bags. At that, Amelia rubbed her eyes and sat up. It can't be true. Go check for yourself. Amelia, not wasting even a single moment, walked towards her door and peered down. From here, the moon was shining in through the stained glass just right, illuminating the hallway below. In the distance, a shadow could be seen moving. Lalika smiled. See? Lalika picked up a toy doll that still sat on Amelia's bed, a relic from the past. Its colored hair almost seemed to stand on end. Don't you want to keep her here? Don't you want her to be like this doll? Keep her here. Right. Your own special doll who will never leave you. Don't worry, I'll make it happen, just for you. I'll make sure you're happy forever. Go down the hall to my room. Behind the bookcase, wait for me. Amelia's eyes had glazed over as if she wasn't truly there. She stood from the bed and picked up a small black case that rested on her nightstand before leaving the room. It wasn't long afterwards that Lilika followed in her footsteps, just in time to see Sophia ascending the staircase. She walked straight past Lilika, who was smiling happily, and approached Amelia's door. As she knocked, the door flew open with a groan. Amelia, are you in here? Amelia's waiting for you. From somewhere hidden in the darkness, a fragile melody filled the air. Almost instantly, Sophia turned toward the sound and began to follow. Lilika sped up enough to walk beside her. Isn't this great? You and Amelia, don't you? Isn't this great? You like Amelia, don't you? Don't you want to make her happy? She would be ecstatic for you to stay forever. So why don't we help her to be happy forever? She offered no answer. They entered the room together. In the center of the room, surrounded by candles, Amelia sat. Her skirt fanned out around her and spread out over the floor were piles of letters. Upon close inspection, each was filled with words that had been crossed out and signed with yours, Marina. Amelia, are you awake? Her eyes were shut tight, yet her hands moved enough to play the sorrowful tune. Please listen to me, Amelia. Like Lika is, she isn't. I'm not what? You are going to leave her, aren't you? Lilika shut the door, dragging the heavy lock across. In response, Sophia rushed backwards and tried the handle to no avail. Amelia's eyes finally opened. In place of her usual golden eyes was a glare of deep red. Amelia, snap out of it. Please snap out of it. You want to take her away? Amelia, please. One at a time, Lilika blew out the candles on the floor. The room was plunged into darkness. Amelia fell forward, her body exhausted. It's nice to meet you, Sophia. I'm sure we're going to have a fun time living together, since you will be staying with us after all, right? Lilika, could you pass the sugar? Of course, Amelia. With a smile, Lilika pushed the sugar across the table towards Amelia. She picked up the teaspoon and dropped a single cube of sugar into her tea. Would you like one, Lilika? No, thank you. Just being around you makes my tea sweet enough. And you, Sophia? You're awfully quiet today. I'll give you one. Next to Amelia sat Sophia, perfect and pristine. To Amelia's eyes, at least. But Lilika saw the truth. Her flesh convulsed and pulsated, and her eyes bulged from what was once her head. The shape of Sophia was gone, and in its place was a mound of a person who used to be. Lilika smiled. You know she likes sugar in her tea. There's no need to ask. You're right. I'm so happy. Sophia, Lilika, you are both so important to me. Thank you for being by my side. Anytime, isn't that, Sophia? From now on, it's just the three of us.